Hello and welcome to the Next 100 Days podcast. My name is Graham Arrowsmith.
And my name's Kevin Appleby. And as we record this, Graham, it's March the 9th here in the UK. So as usual, I don't know which day it is, but we've hit the coldest day of the year and it's blinking snowing. So what better thing to do than go all of the way to California to talk to this week's guest?
Yeah, we've got Tony Leonard, who helps creative people with their careers. It's a really fascinating thing. By the way, his clients love him, but he does bribe them. So, I mean, there's no question about that. He gets some pretty good testimonials. But no,
in the same way as we bribe people for testimonials.
Well, that's true as well. That's all. It's also true. But Tony, welcome to the Next 100 Days podcast.
Oh, guys, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, it's really early over in California right now, so we will be gentle with you. But what can you define what creative is in your terms?
Oh, wow. Well, I think all humans are creative by nature. We create businesses, we create families, we create art. I tend to work with folks who are associated with the creative process in relation to some kind of art.
Okay.
And so that means artists themselves, people who work for artistic organizations, people in marketing, people in UX design and research. And then I have a lot of clients who come to me because they're in careers and they're not super excited and they're looking for more creativity in their lives. So that's another way that I work with people.
So therefore, there would be hope for Kevin Appleby in that sense, then.
Well, we'll have to see how this interview goes.
He's quite creative with numbers, but then again, he's an accountant.
That's it. Creative. I'm the typical accountant when it comes to numbers. You see, if you were my CEO and you asked me what are the numbers, Kevin, I'd say, what would you like the numbers to be, Tony?
Yeah,
that's very creative.
Well, no, you obviously, and so creative careers. So people get into a fug, they get stuck, and then they think, what on earth shall I do? And then they seek you out. How do they know that you exist, Tony? How do they find you? What do you say to get people to come to your door?
The internet helps. Got a website and spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, which can be really boring. That's like going to the office without really going to the office. And also a lot of referrals. People who work with me, I hope, have a good experience and they end up telling other folks. So that's typically how I get clients.
And okay, so they turn up at your door. Typically, their challenges. And I read one, a young girl who was basically got into a job pandemic time and basically found that it wasn't for her. And then she looked you up and then you helped her, not least by listening. And a lot of people have commented on that, Tony, that you're a good listener.
Yeah, I think that's quite possibly the most important thing that I do. Is I like to do intro calls where I get a chance to meet and talk with potential clients, and I try to listen for as long as they'll talk. The more information that people gives me context. It gives me understanding of what their challenges are, the blocks that they're dealing with, their oftentimes their strengths or even their genius that maybe they're not seeing. So really deep, active listening is a core part of my methodology.
That's interesting. You'll spot the genius that they might not in and of themselves. They won't necessarily see something that they do or are doing or could do is really valuable to them.
Yeah, and that way I try to be a mirror. So I've worked with so many people who are doing things that they just think are just normal and don't realize that if they wanted, they could monetize them. They have real value in a marketplace. And then just things that they're doing that may provide them some kind of value in their life in a more holistic way. And then a lot of folks, especially creative folks, struggle with confidence. And so it's important to say, hey, wait, I'm hearing like, you've got this thing figured out. You don't quite yet know how to speak about it with confidence. But I'm hearing some real strengths here.
Mm. And that's important, that you're able to reflect back honestly what you're hearing. Because if you're being, shall we say, you're using a bit of salesman's license, that it might be in some way damaging to them. If you're almost too ebullient about their skills, you have to be honest with them. But if you see something, then you're going to go for it. Is that how it is?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that authenticity, truth, those things are paramount. Integrity, yeah. Those are, you just can't, in my view, you can't work with people successfully if you're feeding them a bunch of BS.
Yeah.
So that's exactly right. And I think what like to do is be very upfront and explicit and say, hey, there's something I'm seeing that maybe you're not seeing that's really positive, a strength of yours, and then use some humor to kind of bring in the more, okay, these are the ways that you can grow. And also the way we talk about growth and failures, and I'm doing the quotes with my hands. That's everybody's got their strengths, got their challenges. We've learned from failures and successes, and so to normalize that, to bring non-judgment to the table, to try to say, hey, this kind of dynamic is true for everyone, and let's start addressing what you need to work on, but let's like kind of use a positive mind frame in doing that.
I certainly think there's an issue with creative folk in general, that you put something together and to you and I, it looks absolutely brilliant. And they're thinking, oh, I've not got that right. I've not got that right. Oh, I made a bit of a mess of that bit. And their appreciation of whatever it is they've produced is way lower. So I get that there's a real lack of confidence there to get over, even though we, as the audience to that work, think it is fantastic. And I suppose I reflect on myself in the times that I've stood up in a workshop, given a presentation, get something wrong. Thing is, nobody in the audience ever noticed what should have been there. It was only me that knew it was wrong. And you always dwell on the negatives and not the positives, don't you?
Absolutely. As you were talking about something that an artist might not be proud of, that other people would see value in, I was thinking about your spreadsheets and just how terrific they might be. I've worked with people, honest to God, I've worked with people who are so good at Excel that it's like an art form to me, so fast, and to me it's such a foreign world. But to your point, people are so incredibly hard on themselves, and there's a lot of research that like backs this up, and it's both informative and kind of depressing. Like if you have a meeting with your boss and your boss tells you 99 things you're doing great, you're just doing great in 99 different areas, and there's one thing that they're like, this is where you could grow. You go home thinking about that one thing. And so that's a lot of the work too, is to like help people reframe and say, no, wait, let's spend 99 minutes thinking about each one of those 99 good things, and let's spend 1 minute thinking about the one challenge.
Is that how you do it though? Because I mean, we've all been there, haven't we? And we've had appraisals, and in corporate at least. The best appraisals I had, by the way, in corporate is where, and anybody listening to this from Royal Mail, then you know where to go and find this guy. But basically, he said, write your own appraisal. And of course, actually, it's quite a clever thing to do, because actually, in some way, I mean, you're going to top it up a little bit, but in some ways, you have to be fairly self-critical, and so I don't know what the right approach is, because you could be trying to be really genuine. And here are 3 things that I really love about you, but that maybe this one, inevitably they're going to focus on the one that's maybe needing a bit of improvement. Is there some way in which you can make that apart from doing the 99 minutes and then 1 minute on the other, is that allocation of time the only way around this?
No, I don't think that the allocation of time is more of a metaphor. I think a, a lot of times awareness is key. So if we're typically we focus on all the one negative without the awareness that we're doing that. So if we bring that to light, bring that to attention, and now somebody's like, oh yeah, oh my God, I am doing that.
Yeah.
That's a big first step in being able to then say, well, okay, let's look at both, let's talk about what the strengths are, and let's be real about what the challenges are. And for some people, there are some serious challenges. But typically when you start to become aware of our propensity to really dive in and connect with the negative, that helps to change people's mindset.
Yeah.
And there are other strategies. You're probably familiar with growth mindset, just the idea that people think, oh, I was born and I'm just not good at math. And the way that we change that is, I'm not good at math or business yet. I'm not good at bringing my creative work into the marketplace yet. I don't know how to do a proper job search yet. So if we have that growth mindset, that can help a lot.
Yeah.
You spent 6 years at University of California Berkeley as a PhD student advisor. Presumably, is that advising PhD students, or is that as a PhD advising students?
That's a great question. I should probably clarify that on my LinkedIn. I advised PhD students. So I was in the Graduate School of Business for a couple of years, and then a couple of years in the Department of Psychology, and I finished in working with neuroscience PhD students. And that was interesting, really interesting, helping PhD students navigate the world of academia, where it can get really isolating and a lot of solitude because you're just working on your thesis, for the last 3 years typically, and helping people start thinking about careers oftentimes outside of academia, because the old tradition of like, you go to get a PhD and then you're going to be guaranteed a professor tenure track position, that doesn't really hold true anymore. So just helping people with their careers, helping people with challenges that come up inside their labs or the internal politics. Maybe my specialty at Berkeley was helping people navigate bureaucracy, which is not the most fun job, and one of the reasons why I left, but an important one nonetheless.
Oh yeah. I've got to say, I've fallen foul of that. I wish I'd have had a coach at the time. There was one or two people around, but I found I was on the wrong end of those sticks usually. But and hence working for myself now. So basically, from a coaching point of view, what would you be looking for in the ideal candidate who came to you? So they must be like this, or you'll just take them any which way, I'm sure, but they're usually suffering in some way. How do they present to you typically?
I really love working with everyone. I've had a lot of coaching that's helped me get into a niche, and so I've had great coaches. People typically come to me, I guess. One of the things that I really love helping people with is major transitions. So they're in some kind of creative professional role, and they're realizing something about this isn't working. It might be subtle, it might be a dumpster fire. And that's kind of like the first work, is to assess, where are we at on that continuum? Is this something that could be fixed with a couple of maybe difficult conversations? Or is this systemic and so horrible we need to get out as quickly as possible? So that's kind of the first work that I'll do. And that's where that listening and having conversations and trying to understand where somebody is at. That's people are not often aware of where they're at in that continuum. Like, how bad is it? They may think, no, it's not that bad. And then when we start talking about it, I was like, oh yeah, that's really bad. And so they need to come to that realization on their own. And then helping them make that transition into maybe a career or a job that does bring more creativity. Maybe it's working for themselves. So all the steps along the way to get to a better place. That's work that I love.
One of the things that you offer people is this idea of you don't call it this, but you call it, you perhaps ought to be thinking about it. It's called I would call it the next 100 days coaching package, but you call it the 3-month coaching package. Maybe something we could consider, Kevin, rebranding that kind of stuff. But what you offer is weekly 50-minute coaching sessions for 3 months. And you take them from the place that they're at to a place that together you agree that they should be at. And that might actually be a new job, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. In a lot of cases, it is. People will come to me either really wanting to leave or they don't have a job and they need to get one.
Right.
And it is, I love that tempo, that rhythm, the weekly kind of check-in. If I give somebody some homework to do, I'm really more interested in what I don't care so much whether or not they did it. It's like interesting to me why. If you didn't do it, what's going on there, and if you did it, what's going on there? What worked? And I often tell people, like, I have some ideas for what you can do, and feel free to delete them and throw them in the trash. But there is kind of an arc to the work in the best case, and we're trying to. I mean, in the first stages, definitely it's setting goals that are tangible, practical, achievable. Trying to define what those goals are, getting clarity. And I really love helping people get to the point where they plant their flag and they say, this is what I'm doing. And they've assessed all of the possible things that they could do in their lives professionally. Yeah. They've assessed all of the risks and the opportunity costs. Maybe there was a couple things that they were really holding on to. They're like, I care about these things. And we've gone through a process where they've let go, and then maybe there's some grief and sadness around that. And then they're able to say, you know what, I'm committing to this one thing or two things. Yeah. And I'm ready to face what the challenges are. I know it's going to be hard. I'm going to get bumped around. There's going to be turbulence, but I'm ready to face that.
I mean, the practical things that you help with, by the sound of it, are looking at how they would improve their CV or their resume, a cover letter, really important. But you know what? I'm in the number of jobs that I've done for charity that I worked with and my own company, the number of people who bother with a cover letter, it's so disappointing. And then their LinkedIn profile, which we've talked at several times, Kevin, haven't we? We've covered that kind of area, in fact, very recently. But you actually help with that, but there's so much underneath that, isn't there? That's just almost like the manifestation of it. But presumably you have to get to the roots of it all, as you've just said, really.
Yeah, that's really a good description. And that's true. I mean, those things are really critically important: resume, cover letter, LinkedIn. But I think a best practice in career coaching is that the biggest bang for your buck is networking and tracking on a spreadsheet. Okay, who am I reaching out to? When am I reaching out to them? And when the notes from that conversation, and we study kind of like, how do you reach out to somebody that you don't know? And LinkedIn's such a great resource for that. And really, it's just informational interview. That's what we call it in the US. And I'm not sure if you guys use that language. But yes, so there's that level of the kind of tactics, but there's also, what's going on underneath. So we can start to make a really broad, persuasive case that you're the best candidate for the job. And that persuasive case is showing up in all of the different material that you're creating.
It's probably a little bit provocative, but at the end of the day, recently, as you'll know, excuse me, Twitter was bought by Elon Musk, and Musk basically fired, I don't know, 3/4 of his staff. almost like sight unseen. But on the face of it, sounds like a pretty good judgment. Things still going, in some ways working better, etc. But it's almost like the old adage with CVs or resumes that, you could have a pile of resumes and you could take the top half of it, throw it away, and still get a good candidate. It's almost like, is there a way in which if you're in a job that you keep it next to the 3 other people who might get fired? Is there something that you can actually advise? How do I keep my Twitter job? Metaphorically, it doesn't have to be Twitter, but is there something that says I can coach somebody to stay and develop within my career as opposed to move and be flushed out, shall we say?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts on that. One is yes, that you can, and I think the best way to do that is to build relationships internally, and be thinking about, okay, what are the power dynamics in the office, in the corporate hierarchy, and how can I create some kind of safety to the best of my ability. Also, you can be the world's best engineer and Elon Musk comes around and is just like, you're gone, and like that's just
great.
That's part of capitalism. is there are certain structural elements that this is we can't, there are forces that we're dealing with that we can't prepare for, and we can prepare for them, but we only control so much. And so the old adage is, focus on what you can control is something that I preach.
Sorry, Kevin,
we've said on many occasions, Graham, it's not you that gets made redundant, it's your job that gets made redundant.
I had somebody tell me that when I was about 24, and I just lost my job with British American Tobacco, and that was, and it was all about a state of mind. So basically, instead of saying I'm redundant, my job has been made redundant. I'll never be redundant. And that's one of the things. It had been about my age when I was 24, and I listened really, really carefully to him, because I just thought, wow, that's such a great piece of advice.
But I think in terms of the other side of that, how do you retain your job under pressure? Isn't there something there about making sure you're in a place where you are able to do your best work?
100%. And that's about, so I think one of the first steps is finding a work culture, a work environment where your values align. And so if you have certain values, you want to seek out an employer and a company, corporation, organization, agency that shares those values. That gives you an opportunity to more quickly get on the same page. So you can continue to grow, but you're also continuing to grow and develop and make relationships with people who share some commonalities. And when people see each other in each other, it's harder for them to let you go and fire you, like when they see your humanity. Elon Musk never met all of the people that he fired. So it's easy to do that.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. It's easy, but I mean, he has he certainly has my vote. I've got a Tesla set outside, so basically, I'm in his camp.
He's good at what he does. Yeah.
Well, the reason for bringing that up is it's pretty much in your area anyway. You might have to deal with some of these people.
Backyard.
But there were so many, shall we say, negatives that the average person who was looking at, the kind of, fun things that they were getting up to, masqueraded as a job. I just don't know if it resonates. So I wonder whether or not we as a people have got, I don't know, more intolerant, but also more, what's the right word? People expect more for less. And I just wonder whether that's something that younger people have that has been bred into them, possibly through universities, that basically makes them literally harder to place. I don't know.
In my experience, a lot of people talk about the different generations, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, boomers.
Yeah.
I mean, of course it shows up when people in different stages of life, when they're at different ages, and different things become more meaningful and less meaningful.
Yeah.
But to me, it's been a more fluid experience. And the younger folks that I work with are super, super engaged. And that I do sense an expectation that they want to move up quickly. They want things to happen quickly, which I mean, that's what they've been taught. Is like the Mark Zuckerberg is like the example of what everybody needs to become. Like everything needs to happen so quickly. And this is something that I talk about a lot, that is, I think, against the grain, especially being in near Silicon Valley, and with all the tech, is slowness, is a career. Building a career takes time, and you need to put in value to get that value, the value that you bring to the organization. That is hopefully what the value that you're going to receive. So in my experience, the younger people I work with are hard workers. They're ambitious. They and it may be, though, that things are so sped up with social media, and everything happens so much faster, that there's that expectation.
I wonder, you mentioned in your on your website that you've dealt with 65-year-olds and 25-year-olds, and possibly even younger than 25-year-olds. But the point is, those two extremes. Excuse me. I remember when I was the sort of 25-year-old and a little bit older, I was working for a big corporation at Royal Mail over here in the UK, like the USPS, but better. And basically, I had to get that in. But the point is, I remember being far more creative because I was investing in myself almost outside of the realm of the job. So in other words, I was reading around the subject of direct marketing, for instance, to make me more appealing and more effective within the role that I was doing and the roles that I wanted to do. So I wonder whether that's as done my degree, that's it, I don't want to do any more learning, or is there a lifetime learning element that you offer as part of your coaching?
Yeah. No, I think the lifetime learning is huge. And I applaud you and anyone else who takes the time to do that, if you have the luxury of having that time. And it is a lot of people can begin to make creative transitions by spending some time outside of work focusing on their craft, whether that be writing or painting or making movies. And also, as you're kind of describing, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but that staying creative, staying tapped into your own creativity, it flows into the work that you're doing. Yeah, again, if given an opportunity to do that, and to some extent we have control over that. We can tap into our own creativity outside of work, and then hopefully more and more managers and the people that guide professional work are open to that and see the value in that creativity and innovation and everything that comes along with it.
I think it potentially makes your job much more enjoyable. I did a master's degree and an MBA, and it was a part-time one. So I was, every kind of Wednesday, I was getting this sort of mind blown by some latest guy talking about the latest thing. Might be HR, which and accountancy and so forth. But HR, I kind of like but things in the years.
The accountancy, I'll tell you.
But no, in fairness though, with HR, the next day I might be not firing somebody, but coaching somebody who was probably going to leave the business. So it was always really relevant. So there was an input and then a kind of an output. So I don't know. And I was very much at the time a big champion of external learning, because it made you more creative. And I just wondered whether that's something that you've noted as well.
Yeah, maybe I'd be curious to hear about what kind of external learning or creativity you were doing during that time.
Well, I mean, if you just took the actual MBA, I mean, it covered all kinds of business subjects, and what I found is that
I see. Yeah.
at work, I was applying it, even though it might be weird and it might be HR, which wasn't my job. I was applying those sorts of thinking styles and the thought processes into that particular area of my job, because I'm still a manager. I still had people working for me, but it was that kind of idea. But then there was marketing things that, yeah. So there's lots of different inputs, and it just seemed to me that it made me and the other people who did these sorts of things far more useful to the organization, not just because it was every single day you were improving your creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. The MBA example, and then you're studying subjects that are far afield of what you want to really, the juice of what you want to get out of that. But those ideas and concepts can be super helpful. And I really, as an undergraduate student, I was in interdisciplinary social science. So I really enjoyed learning from different disciplines, sociology, history, political science. Yeah. And my goal going to graduate school was to focus on or do a major that people would just know, like English or business. But I ended up in a master's program that was interdisciplinary humanities and social thought, which I still have no idea what that means. But again, it gave me that really broad. I ended up doing a master's thesis in modern literature, and that has enabled me to just think in really different ways, and that's been exciting.
I know that there is a strong element of the sort of, I don't know, relating to your audience, and your audience is probably Californian in many respects, but maybe not. I mean, you might.
I hope it's British and Californian.
Okay, so you well, I mean, in fairness, that we'll get to that in a second, but basically, you almost have a social, shall we say, a perspective to your thinking style, to the way you come across. Is that important? Is that just you, and that just reflects you and your values, or is that something that you feel that might be useful anyway?
I think it's both. I think the latter is important because for coaching for so long, especially coaching done by white men, has just been like, you can do anything. You put your mind to it, you can be anything. And that, although that some cases is true, there's truth in that. There's also really, people are facing systemic barriers that, just like internal psychological barriers, are really difficult to overcome. If you're a Black person in the United States, there's a whole lot of racism that you have to overcome in many cases to be successful in business, let's say in a majority white company. Same is true for women. Same is true for immigrants. So just acknowledging that those sociological structures impede and act as or barriers, I think that helps my coaching, because I can just say, hey, like that's real. That's not something that's made up. That I don't think that, and this is up to each of my clients to determine, but I hope that's not something that's going to stop you. And rarely it is, but recognizing it and saying, okay, let's problem solve and think of strategies to deal with that element is important. And I hope to continue to build on that in my practice. And yeah, absolutely. It's also growing up in Berkeley, California, and right near Berkeley, like that is part of my value system. So that's something that I want to bring to my
You're
work.
not from the Midwest then. So basically that, I mean, you wouldn't have had the same sort of value set that you have if you're in Berkeley.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, where we're born and who our parents are, and that shapes all of our political beliefs. Definitely.
Of course it does. Of course it does. But it strikes me that the last visit I made to America was last autumn, and basically one of the things that I noted is that there is a difference of opinion
Yeah.
And it,
Yeah.
you know, and
Put it
you know,
lightly.
without going into the obvious detail, but I mean,
Right.
if you've watched previous episodes, you'll know which side I tend to fall down on, but or at least come down on, and basically it seems to me that there is a requirement for a coach to actually negotiate a way through that, because you know, if you're a black person in, I don't know, a majority white state, and you want to get yourself into a job, you can't just cry about it. You've got to do something that's productively going to get you into that job, don't you? It's a mindset that allows you, instead of, you know, bitching about your
And
lot,
there's got to be
isn't
that.
it a mindset?
I think whoever you are, whether you're black, white, male, female, you have some beliefs. And you will find loads and loads of evidence to support your beliefs. One of which might be, oh, I'm from this particular background. Somebody from my background never gets that job. Therefore, you convince yourself you can't get there. That's a fairly crude example, but there's a load of that goes on in belief systems, besides the actual real barriers that are there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't speak for Black people, but the Black people that I know, I don't know anybody that's bitching or complaining. I think they're dealing with real structural barriers. And what's so incredible to me about working with clients who come from backgrounds that are not typically in represented in corporate America, let's say, is how hard they do fight. And that what they have to endure that we as white folks we're not aware of. But the folks that I know and I work with work like real hard.
Yeah, I had experience working for a printing company, and it was literally you could hit a 9-iron into an area that was covered by Pakistanis in that area. Well, I mean the British Pakistanis, but nonetheless, you know, and they've never ever recruited a Pakistani before, ever. I made the first appointment, and it was like you might as well have, you know. I mean, I don't know, I don't know how some people regarded me, but the lad was all right. It just came in and got on with it, and it wasn't long before he was having a go at me. But I mean, you know, what can I say about that? I probably line myself up for that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, he fit right well in, and then they made subsequently other appointments. I had the first person of color who came in to work with me as a designer. The point is, I couldn't give a monkeys about ultimately their skin color. I wanted to get the best people I could get for that job, but it's easy for me to say that because I've got a white skin. Well, mine's kind of rouge. That's probably too much coffee. But the truth of it is that I can't help, and you can't help the skin color that you were born with. But isn't it somewhere in your head that says, give people a chance, whatever they are, wherever they're from? But ultimately, if they're not good enough, I'm sorry, but you're not going to get it whether you're this color or that color. There's no affirmative action. There's only the right action based on your abilities.
Well, we might have to, because this is a much broader conversation, and there's many nuances that.
Yeah, I guess.
I could go into. I will say that I think a meritocracy, kind of a colorblind meritocracy, is a great ideal. But as you said, it doesn't exist with a community of Pakistanis that
it didn't. It's true.
It didn't. So that I think that's a wonderful ideal to strive towards, and I hope that we get there. I don't. To me, it's pretty clear we're not there. And so work needs to be done to give people that opportunity to just be like, if I'm better than this other person, I should just get the job. And if I'm not, cool. I'm not as good. I'm not as I don't have as much experience.
I mean, if you had this magic wand that we give you from the next 100 Days podcast, and you said, right, okay, I can wave this wand, and 2 or 3 of the things that I really want to happen in my field of career coaching, what would they be?
That's a great question. I'll answer it this way. One of the things that I do actually like about LinkedIn is that people are really questioning what it means to be a professional. What is the future of work? And if we can change the notion of what it means to be a professional and be more inclusive with who gets to be a part of the conversation and the work and at the board meetings, I think we're going to have a more harmonious society, and more interesting and more dynamic and more productive. So that's one thing, is I would like to change the world of work so that it was more inclusive, and you know, I see that happening places, and then I see the opposite happening in other places. I would definitely wave the wand so that I became the world's richest and wealthiest coach on the planet Earth. Definitely want to. That's an aspiration. Build the empire. Just have it happen really quickly. I don't believe in cars, because you got to fly the helicopter. Like, you can get the most expensive car, but you're still sitting in traffic. I mean, we sit in traffic out here all the time. So
the helicopter, just go straight to the Learjet.
Yeah, but right, absolutely. You're 100% right. And the helicopter is for like the local trips, you know, like the commute to work. So just get rid of that. Hopefully the new autonomous flying machines that are coming fast. I know that might sound like it's talking about aliens, but just wait. Amazon's going to be delivering packages with little drones real soon. Maybe that can take me to point A to point B pretty soon. So
about an hour ago, I had one of those, but he looked like a human, to be honest with you. But the wife must buy everything from bloody Amazon.
Sneaky.
Yeah, very, very sneaky. They've got this trick now. They sort of knock on the door and then they dash. You haven't even had a chance to come down, go to the front door. Just amazing.
I'm convinced there was one yesterday that just managed to stick the note in the letterbox and leave the parcel. Didn't even bother ringing the doorbell, because the dogs never even noticed. And that's got to be rare. That's got to be a real skill. Get it out front door without the dogs noticing.
I went to get the milk in there, because we still have milk deliveries in the UK, in some parts of the UK. And basically, I went to get the milk in for early doors, and there was a bloody package on the doorstep. Like, really? I mean, surprised it wasn't pinched, but apparently it was some gloves that she needs. I mean, I don't know. But what can I say? You have been a really generous and thoughtful guest today on the Next 100 Days podcast. Thank you.
That's great. Some deep subjects there.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tony's got huge amounts of skill and this ability to listen carefully to what his clients are saying, and the testimonials on his webpage. By the way, his webpage, we haven't mentioned it, it's Tony Leonard, that's LEONARD coaching.com, TonyLeonardCoaching.com. And if you go there, it's good, nice website, and basically you'll get an idea of the sorts of things that you can do, and I'm sure if you get in touch with him, he'll help you, so you don't have to be in Oakland, California to work with him.
But I'm reflecting on the theme that's come up in this week's podcast and in last week's podcast with Dave Rogers, that if you're in the wrong place, you've got to do something about it. Dave was talking about being on the hamster wheel.
Yeah.
And only when lockdown came along, he was able to get off it and see there was something different there. And we're reflecting today on Tony's sort of 90-day coaching program.
Yeah.
And genuinely, it takes, if you're in the wrong place, you realize you're stuck. It does take that 90-day process to get your mind somewhere else, think it through, work out where you should be, and do something about it.
I think Tony's humility and so forth, and his ability to listen. The one thing I didn't mention that he does in that coaching package is mock interviews. I mean, he stressed the importance of networking, and there's no question it's one of the best things you can do. But the mock interview, I've found that when I've been helping friends and family, etc., other people that have worked with me, the mock interview is so important. And that, just by almost like time out, what you've just said, maybe let's rework how you've just said that. And it's that kind of hellfire. This guy's giving me a hard time here. And the more that people can practice interviewing, the better they're going to be in telling their stories, showing the evidence for the work that the skills that they are going to get across. So I think getting a coach like Tony with that kind of level of ability, I think, is going to be fantastic if you're in the creative
and
profession.
Particular if you're recognizing some of the barriers that we talked about, that might be race, might be gender, whatever, that you want to push through. And I'm reflecting again, just released a podcast on my other podcast, Grow CFO Show, Graham, with a guest that we've had on this podcast a couple of times. Do you remember David B. Horn, Funded Female Founders?
Yes, of course, I got the book.
I was talking to David again about those barriers that are genuinely there.
Oh, it's shocking. I mean, investment in female businesses is just it's just shocking. It is shocking.
And we've both got daughters who want to succeed.
Yeah, of course.
I just find it so wrong that they should have these barriers put in front of them.
But oddly enough, in my daughter's profession, in the sort of family field in law, I mean, there are men, but vast majority are female. So there are things in which where females dominate. They don't dominate bricklaying because it's just not their thing, and it'll never be their thing because of the size of their bodies and so forth and so on. So basically, I think we have to be reasonable in our sort of categorization of what's unfair, shall we say, or what needs redressing.
Graham, absolutely. And it's a very, very complex area.
Yeah.
And if you start going into some of the science that's in this area, that even talks about male-female brain, and realizing that there's a type of brain that's got two language centers and a type that's got one language center. And some are better at some things than others.
Yeah. Doesn't
mean to say there should be any barriers in the way.
No, it does. I think in a way, this podcast, I mean, don't get me wrong, we have a small voice, but I'm sure it's a voice that every now and again people might hear and agree with or disagree with. Tony will disagree with my preference for the 45th president. But at the end of the day, we have those preferences because of the way in which we've been attracted to those characters and the things that you've seen them do or not do. Now, from my point of view, I think there's a lot more that joins us together than splits us apart, but you've got to work at that. It's not because otherwise we are going to split into two big lumps, especially in America, possibly over here as well. And I just think that would be very, very damaging. And so, it's been a really interesting, and I thought it would be. I thought it'd be a really interesting podcast with Tony. So, today I've been Graham Arrowsmith.
I've been Kevin Appleby. Goodbye.
Goodbye.